Tokyo Electric has been in denial, trying to downplay the full impact of this nuclear accident. However, radiation is continuing to leak out of the reactors. The situation is not stable at all. So you're looking at basically a ticking time bomb. It appears stable, but
But
it appears stable, but just because the government tries to lowball all the numbers, downplay the severity of the accident, and that's making it much worse.
How much of a disaster is Fukushima today?
Well, Fukushima is possibly the longest running continuous industrial disaster in history. It has not stopped because the risks are still there. This is going to take decades to decommission the site. And then what is going to happen with all this highly radioactive waste, especially the molten fuel? Nobody knows.
Well, TEPCO is like the little Dutch boy. All of a sudden we have cracks in the dike, you put a finger here, you put a finger there, and all of a sudden new leaks start to occur, and they're overwhelmed. I suggest that they be removed from leadership entirely and be put as consultants. An international team of top physicists and engineers should take over with the authority to use the Japanese military. I think the Japanese military is the only organization capable of bringing this raging accident under control, and that's what Gorbachev did in 1986. He saw this flaming nuclear power station in Chernobyl. He called out the Red Air Force. He called out helicopters, tanks, armored personnel carriers, and buried the Chernobyl reactor in 5,000 tons of cement, sand, and boric acid. That's, of course, a last-ditch effort. But I think the Japanese military should be called out.
to do?
Because of the fact that the radiation levels are so great, workers can only go in for perhaps 10 minutes, 15 minutes at a time, and they get their year's dose of radiation. You're there for 1 hour, and you have radiation sickness. You vomit, your white corpuscle count goes down, your hair falls out. You're there for a day, and you get a lethal amount of radiation. At Chernobyl, there were 600,000 people mobilized, each one going in for just a few minutes, dumping sand, concrete, boric acid onto the reactor site. Each one got a medal. That's what it took to bring one raging nuclear accident under control. And I think the utility here is simply outclassed and overwhelmed.
And yet these workers are in for much longer periods of time.
That's right. We don't even know how much radiation levels they're getting because many areas around the site have no monitors. So we don't even know how much radiation many of these workers are getting. And that's why I'm saying if you have access to the military, you can have the option of sandbagging the reactor, encasing it in concrete, or at least have a reserve of troops that can go in for brief periods of time and bring this monster under control.
What has to happen to the plant ultimately?
Well, in the best case scenario, this is the scenario devised by the utility itself. They hope to bring it under control by the end of this year. By the end of this year, they hope to have the pumps working and the reaction is finally stabilized. They're literally making it up as they go along. We're in totally uncharted territories. You get any nuclear engineering book, look at the last chapter, and this scenario is not contained in the last chapter of any nuclear engineering textbook on the planet Earth. So they're making it up as they go along, and we are the guinea pigs for this science experiment that's taking place.
And we are the guinea pigs for this science experiment that's taking place. And we are the guinea pigs. The guinea pigs.
UN special rapporteurs are calling on Japan to protect workers cleaning up the crippled Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. The three independent experts appointed by the UN Human Rights Council issued a joint statement on Thursday. It says tens of thousands of workers are being exposed to radiation in the decontamination process. It expresses deep concern that workers are being deceived about the risks of radiation exposure and don't have adequate training or protective measures. That statement says the workers at risk include homeless people. One of the experts, lawyer Baskut Tonjak, told NHK that they asked the Japanese government for an explanation, but he says their concerns have not been dispelled and they want to conduct an on-site investigation to establish the facts. Japan's permanent mission to the UN in Geneva says it is regrettable that the statement is based on one-sided information, despite the Japanese government's sincere response to the request for an explanation. The mission says the statement could cause unnecessary concern, misunderstanding, or add to the suffering of people in disaster-hit areas.
So, this report from Tempo seems serious, maybe even ominous. What exactly is going on?
But still, it sounds to me like it's problematic that 6 years after this meltdown, there's such a high reading.
It is a very high reading. They may encounter even higher readings. The difficulty with this high reading is that the prospect that workers can actually go there, even all suited, becomes more and more remote. Robots are going to have to do all this work. That was mostly foreseen. But the radiation levels are so high that even robots cannot survive for very long. So now they're going to have to go back to the drawing board and redesign robots that can survive longer or figure out how to do the work faster. And it's going to be more costly and more complicated to decommission this site.
The night is cold here in Sendai, far to the north of Tokyo. This station is the warmest place to sleep for people living rough. It's also a fertile recruiting ground. Brokers are selling homeless people like this to companies cleaning up radiation in Fukushima. Shizuya Nishiyama's been sleeping rough for a year, and he's twice been sent to scrub down radioactive hotspots.
We're an easy target for recruiters. We turn up here with all our bags, wheeling them around and around the station, and we're easy to spot. Then they say to us, "Are you looking for work? Are you hungry?"
Activists say homeless people are flocking here from across Japan to look for work in the tsunami-devastated north, but the safer jobs are now in short supply. Yasuhiro Aoki is the leader of this homeless support group. Many workers are reaching their radiation limits, he says, so there's a shortage, and the homeless are being used to fill in the gaps. There are no figures for the number of homeless people cleaning up Fukushima. Government rules don't require checks on the lowest tier of companies supplying workers. On the 11th floor of this apartment block lives one of Sendai's labour brokers, Seiji Sasa.
I don't ask any questions. That's not my job. I just find people and send them to work. I send them and get money in exchange. That's it. I don't get involved in what happens after that.
If you get high levels of radiation in a short period of time, 4 sieverts is a lethal dose for about half the people within 2 months. So in 530 sieverts per hour would give you a lethal dose in less than 30 seconds.
Wow.
So it's a very, very, very high level of radiation. That's why people cannot go into the reactor and work there. And that's not the end of the bad news, but that's quite a bit of it.
Okay, and all right, there's more bad news. I'm sitting down. Tell me.
Yes. So at the bottom of the reactor, under the reactor, there's a grating, and then under the grating, there's the concrete floor. And what this robot discovered, it was supposed to go around the grating and survey the whole area, but it couldn't because a piece of the grating was deformed and broken. So now it appears that some of the molten fuel may have gone through the grating and maybe onto the concrete floor. We don't know because even robotic surveys are now difficult.